For most of human history, wolves were monsters. If you were alive 30,000 years ago and heard wolves howling beyond the firelight, you knew what they wanted. You were prey. And yet, out of every animal alive during the Ice Age, the mammoths, the cave lions, the giant bears, wolves were the ones that crossed over, not to attack us, to live beside us. Today, there are more than 900 million dogs on Earth. They sleep in our beds. They find avalanche survivors buried under 10 feet of snow. They detect cancer in hospital patients. They sit beside children in courtrooms to keep them calm while they testify. They have been to war with us, crossed oceans with us, and been buried beside us in graves that are 14,000 years old. But none of that was planned. No human tribe decided to recruit the most dangerous predator on the continent. No ancient hunter thought, what this camp really needs is a wolf. The wolves came on their own. They made the first move. And the reason they did it, and what it ultimately meant for both species, is one of the most extraordinary stories in the history of life on this planet. To understand why wolves would ever approach a human camp, you have to understand what their lives actually looked like. 30,000 years ago, wolves were everywhere. Europe, Asia, North America. They were the dominant land predator across most of the northern world. A single pack could cover hundreds of miles of territory. They hunted mammoths, bison, elk, caribou, big prey, dangerous prey, animals that could kick hard enough to shatter a wolf's skull with a single blow. Hunting like that came with a cost. Wolves got injured constantly. A broken leg during a hunt was often a death sentence. A pack that lost too many members in a single season could collapse entirely. And even when a hunt succeeded, there was no guarantee they got to keep the kill. Cave lions, cave hyenas, and competing wolf packs were always nearby, waiting for the chance to steal what another predator had worked for. The life of an Ice Age wolf was one of extraordinary skill paired with extraordinary risk. Every meal required violence. Every season brought the possibility that the pack simply would not survive it. And then humans appeared. From a wolf's perspective, a human camp was something genuinely new. Humans were weaker than almost every other large predator, slower, no claws, no natural armor. But they did something no other animal in the wolf's world was doing. They made fire. They built shelters. They carried tools made from stone and bone. And most importantly, they were extraordinarily messy. When plants became scarce in winter, hunter-gatherers adjusted their diets to consume more fats and oils from an animal's lower limbs, brain, and organs, leaving behind significant amounts of lean meat as leftovers. Bones were cracked, marrow was extracted, and the rest was abandoned at the site. To a wolf trying to survive a brutal winter, a human camp wasn't just a source of scraps. It was a reliable source of scraps. Predictable calories in a world where nothing else was predictable. The aggressive wolves got speared. The terrified ones stayed too far back and got nothing. But the wolves that were slightly calmer, slightly less reactive, slightly more willing to hold their ground near the firelight without charging or fleeing, those wolves ate. And then they survived. And then they bred with other wolves who shared that same calm. This happened slowly, over hundreds of generations. No wolf decided to become a companion. But evolution doesn't require decisions. It only requires that some individuals survive better than others. And near human camps, the ones who survived better were the ones who were less afraid. Here's where something genuinely strange happened. The wolves that stayed near humans weren't just changing their behavior. When females were selecting mates, they were also gravitating toward males with a similar temperament to their own. Calm wolves were breeding with calm wolves. Generation after generation, that trait became more concentrated. What started as individual personality differences began hardening into something biological. Genomic sequencing of ancient fossils tells us that the separation between modern dogs and their wolf ancestors occurred somewhere between 20,000 and 40,000 years ago, which means the biological changes were already underway long before the first physical evidence of domestication shows up at any archaeological site. The transformation wasn't happening because humans planned it. The old theory that ancient people took wolf pups from their dens, hand-raised them, and trained them into companions has been called a romantic fairy tale by biologists who have spent decades actually working with wolves. Adult wolves don't tame. The window for deep socialization closes within weeks of birth. What actually happened was quieter, more patient. It was evolution doing what evolution always does, filtering a population based on who survives, one generation at a time, across thousands of years. And as those wolves near camp grew calmer, humans began to notice something they hadn't expected. Think about what it meant to have wolves nearby during a hunt. Wolves track prey by scent in ways that are simply beyond human ability. They can smell an animal from miles away. They can follow a trail hours old across frozen ground. They can sort through an entire herd in seconds, identifying the old, the injured, the slow, the ones that are actually catchable. Ancient wolves hunted by sorting a herd to expose the animal that required the least effort to bring down. Once they isolated that animal, the dangerous part began, and that's exactly where humans came in. With sharper weapons, better vision in daylight, and the ability to coordinate a complex kill from a distance, humans could finish what the wolves had started. Both sides shared the work. Both sides shared the meal. Neither species could do alone what both could do together. It went beyond hunting. The wolves sleeping at the edge of camp woke up before any human did. They smelled what was coming before any human could see it. They reacted to bears, rival tribes, and large predators approaching in the dark, long before the humans inside the camp had any idea danger was near. A camp with wolves nearby was measurably safer than a camp without them. Both species were getting something the other simply couldn't provide. And once that loop closed, the relationship accelerated faster than either species could have anticipated. Here is the part most people never hear. When humans and wolves began hunting together in Europe, there was already another group of humans there. Neanderthals. They had lived across Europe for hundreds of thousands of years. They were strong, cold-adapted, and highly intelligent. For most of that time, they were the dominant predator on the continent. 45,000 years ago, Neanderthals were everywhere in Europe. 5,000 years later, they were gone. For decades, scientists argued about why. Climate change, disease, direct conflict. But anthropologist Pat Shipman put forward a different answer after studying the archaeological record closely. Unlike Neanderthals, who left no evidence of ever forming alliances with animals, modern humans had wolves. And that difference, she argues, was decisive. Wolf dogs were found buried alongside enormous concentrations of mammoth bones at human sites across Europe. Some of these sites contained tent-shaped structures built entirely from mammoth bone, suggesting humans were living in one place long enough to construct permanent shelters, which only makes sense if they had reliable, repeated hunting success. You don't build a house from mammoth bones if mammoths are hard to find. Neanderthals were hunting alone. Humans were hunting with wolves. The gap in efficiency wasn't small. It may have been the single greatest competitive advantage in the ancient world. The difference between a species that spread across an entire planet and a species that quietly disappeared. Think about what that actually means. The wolves didn't just change human daily life. They may have determined which version of humanity survived at all. That was 40,000 years ago. But the story didn't stop there. Archaeologists recently discovered wolf remains on a small island off the coast of Sweden. An island so small it has no native land mammals of any kind. The only way any animal gets there is if humans bring it. Isotope analysis of the bones revealed a diet rich in marine protein, seals and fish, matching exactly what the humans on that island were eating. These wolves were being fed. They were smaller than mainland wolves. One showed signs of low genetic diversity, consistent with living in close proximity to people over a long period. These were not wild wolves passing through. They were living with humans, eating what humans ate on an island humans had chosen. The relationship had adapted across continents, across climates, across thousands of years. Not because anyone enforced it, because both sides kept finding reasons to stay. And there is something in that worth sitting with. The standard story of domestication is a story of human control. We tamed things. We decided which animals were useful. We brought them into our world on our terms. But wolves didn't follow that script. Perhaps the wolves decided to work with us just as much as we decided to work with them. It was a negotiation between two predators who had every reason to fear each other, and somehow chose otherwise. The wolf that crept toward your ancestors' fire 30,000 years ago wasn't being conquered. It was making a calculation. The scraps were reliable. The humans were useful. The firelight was warm. And somewhere in the slow arithmetic of survival, staying started making more sense than leaving. That decision changed both species permanently. It changed where humans could go, what they could hunt, and how safe they were in the dark. It changed wolves so deeply that their descendants now sleep in our beds and stare at us with eyes that evolution specifically shaped to reach something inside the human brain. Two predators, one fire, and a choice that neither species fully understood at the time, but you do now.